お待たせいたしました。
Thank you for waiting. Session 3. In an era of 100% renewables, moderator is Director of Renewable Energy Institute, Mika Obayashi. Thank you for the introduction. Obayashi, REI. This is the end of the Japanese fiscal year at the end of March, but thank you for this big attendance. At our institute, this revision, we started from 2012, March annual. Why March? The Japanese people will understand because it is the March 11 anniversary, the disaster and Fukushima incident. March was the timing when the Japanese policy was forced to transform. We offer lots of recommendations to the government, but it is so slow. We talk about the Japanese government slow, but the renewable situation here in Japan, indeed, there are some extraordinary activities. The whole point is 2010 compared to 2011, the year before the disaster. If we look back, what happened? By 2012, renewables out of the power only accounted for 9 to 10%. Most of them were large hydros. But ever since then, only 7 or 8 years have passed, and the renewables is now 16 to 17% in Japan. The increase, most of them are solar, photovoltaic, or wind, which is the so-called new non-hydro renewables. Throughout that process, the power system reform has also been ongoing. There was discussion about the possible business transformation. In the case of Japan, the separation of generation transmission is ongoing. Retail market is also being liberalized. However, if we think back at the world, at around 2000, in the mid-2000s, from until the end of 2010, from around that time, across the world, including Japan, the renewables became very cheap. Unstoppable decline in the price, in particular the variable, mainly wind and solar. There was just an unstoppable decline of price. In the morning, everybody, according to all the speakers and presentation, this was mentioned, and it has caused a geopolitical change. For the last 2 centuries, all over the world, politics and economics ruled the fossil price. The fossil energy ruled, but now it is going to be the renewables that will control the alliances and the geopolitics. Thinking about Japan, indeed, it might be a bit slower than the other places. More recently, renewable is becoming so cheap, and therefore aiming for renewable 100%. Central governments, local communities have started to declare that they will go for 100% renewable. To reach 50%, 60%, 70% of the renewables, or aiming for 100%. The difference might only be 20 or 30%, but that little difference is big. In the earlier session, we heard about what the society would look like, what the businesses would be like. Maybe not all of us might be on the same page, but indeed, aiming for 100% renewable, what approaches for us as a whole is required. That is what we would like to talk about. So the slide shows some countries, regions, and targets. By 2030, for example, Spain, 74% by 2030 would be renewable, 100% by 2050 is Spain's goal. In the case of United States, Hawaii, California, by 2045, 100% renewable are the state goals. We do have panelists from these countries and regions. How exactly renewables shall be expanded shall be discussed. So, first of all, may I first invite from Hawaii, Executive Director, Blue Planet Foundation, maybe there was a change, last-minute change in the program. In fact, Richard Rocherer, he broke his bone and was unable to travel. So we have another excellent speaker, Mr. Jeffrey Mikulina. Jeffrey, first of all, your floor.
Aloha. I'm really grateful to be here, and I appreciate the invitation from Mika, from REI, and happy to be filling in for Dr. Rocheleau, who is a friend of mine. He's much smarter than I am, but maybe I'll be a little more provocative. I'm with a group called Blue Planet Foundation. We're an NGO based in Hawaii. Our goal is to clear the path for 100% renewable energy, starting in Hawaii, and then for the globe. And we really see Hawaii is a place where the future should happen first. We are on islands. We have an abundance of renewable energy. We also pay some of the highest rates on Earth for our energy, for electricity, and for transport. And in many ways, we are a perfect laboratory and microcosm for the rest of the world. Here we have these islands, and each island has its separate energy grid. We have 6 isolated energy grids. So the problems that we're going to face on our islands in reaching 100% are going to be much more acute since we're not tied to a continent or a larger power system. So those lessons will be very valuable for the rest of the globe and how we balance the power and the loads and how we make it work on this small scale. So that's what excites us about Hawaii and the potential. We're making some pretty good progress so far. Here are the latest trends, island by island. And you can see it's a steady upward tick. We're about 30% renewable across the state right now as of last year. You'll notice a big island, Hawaii Island, the largest island, fell off last year. It was the leader, but we had a little eruption and it happened to take out the geothermal facility. So the same heat that gave us geothermal actually took away that renewable energy. It should be back online by the end of the year. So pretty good progress. Then Kauai Island is the real success story, going from single digits, now over 50% renewable. Here's what it looks like. Averages are the blue, and then the green is the maximum renewable on any one day. And you can see on the island of Kauai, it reached 100% a number of times last year. Even the populated island of Oahu, over 50% renewable at some periods of time last year. So really exciting progress. We have a website called islandpulse.org. You can look at it anytime, and it's the real-time energy mix on the island of Oahu, and then our overall energy load. So you can see how we're doing, what the pulse of the island is for renewables. Another important piece, and some folks mentioned this, is efficiency. And here we've really made some great progress on reducing energy use, particularly in the residential sector. And you can see across the state how there's been a steady downward trend after essentially a century of growth in building load, and now it's falling off largely thanks to behavior change and new technologies. We produce an energy report card every year for the islands. I have some copies if you want to see it, or you can also view it online. But here's the problem. We're not going fast enough. We still import about 40 million barrels of oil annually to Hawaii. That's 1 super tanker per week comes to our shores. And as we looked at our progress and where we wanted to be, we asked the question, really, what's it going to take to get there? Our electric utility a few years ago was proposing to build new power plants. There was a plan to import liquefied natural gas, LNG, to Hawaii as a long-term energy plan. So as an organization, we said, we need to set that goal. We need to set a vision for ultimately where we want to be. So we proposed 100%. No state had done it in the US. Let's make Hawaii the first with a 100% renewable energy goal. Well, when we proposed this, the utility said it was impossible. They said it was physically impossible. It wasn't going to happen. It was going to break the bank. And at the time, the governor of our state said, that's magical thinking, and he called me Harry Potter. Which was, I thought, a badge of honor. But we did a big campaign, and we pushed for it. We really brought in a lot of people in pushing for this, and something else happened. There was a psychological change among the population toward renewable energy. In fact, 1 in 3 homes now has solar energy at home. So a lot of families were powering their homes with rooftop solar. So the psychology about renewable energy as an alternative changed. It became more real. It wasn't so abstract. When families knew that solar energy worked for them, they felt more comfortable with pushing the government to adopt a 100% renewable energy target. We also had a lot of credible people on board to support this bold goal. One of them, our board member, George Ariyoshi, the former governor, pushing for it, among others. In our campaign to pressure the government, we had a lot of students involved. That was a lot of fun. We had them drawing illustrations of what they want their future to look like as they grow up. We put these into an advertisement in a book and shared them with lawmakers. And at the end of the day, we succeeded after a 2-year campaign, setting the goal of the year 2045, which, believe it or not, was a compromise date between 2040 and 2050. So it was exciting to see California adopt the same date of 2045 a few years after Hawaii. What happened after that law passed was amazing. Besides just getting the attention from around the globe on Hawaii, the conversation shifted. It was no longer about importing LNG or building new power plants. It was about how do we get there now that we've set the target. And what's funny is the utility went from this is impossible to we can do this, and we can do this 5 years ahead of schedule at a price that's billions less than business as usual. So it was really a revolutionary change the moment that that vision was set and the utility was forced to run the scenarios to get to 100%. So how do we do it? They've done some great modeling. Pretty simple. We just have to match that abundant renewable energy supply with the load and make the load match the supply. We'll probably have to overbuild our solar a whole bunch and then have a lot of flexible load to move it around. We also have to solve for the seasonal energy balance. Sometimes we have a few weeks of rain in Hawaii. So the theory now is we're going to either have to have some biofuels or else we'll have to do hydrogen in some big way to fill in that seasonal gap in our supply. But the truth is we don't know. And that doesn't matter. We're going to learn as we go. We don't have a map, but we have a compass. And we're going to iterate and learn along the way. We're already making great progress. Here's the trend in solar plus storage. Nearly all solar going into Hawaii right now comes with storage. And you can see the price has dropped steadily over the past few years. Just a couple of months ago, projects as low as 8 cents for storage that's dispatchable after the sun goes down. And just for a reference, here's that price of LNG that the utility was hoping for a few years back. So making good progress there. The island of Kauai, this is their dispatch last year, and you can see a lot of solar in the middle of the day, and then the red is that stored solar they're moving to shave off the peak. So I just want to end with 3 lessons that we're learning from Hawaii, and really this is applicable anywhere. Number 1 is transform by design, not by default. Technology and economics are driving this now, and either it can be messy or it can be very tidy. And we're learning kind of both ways. We have a lot of folks that are getting residential storage, batteries at home, and some people who are actually taking circuits off the grid and kind of departing from the utility. We don't want this. We want to all be together. It's not just storage, too. Can we maximize every opportunity to have flexawatts and movable load? There's a great company that's putting in intelligent water heaters so we can use that load as storage and shift it around the grid. So we want to do it by design, not by default. Second, we've heard a bit of this about sectoral connection. We really have to take a whole systems approach, and transport is a big part of that. We're trying to electrify everything in Hawaii. We're excited to announce in a couple of days, JTB is bringing the first all-electric buses to Hawaii, and we have painted these with kids' drawings about what our future should look like for transport. So it's an exciting partnership with JTB this weekend. And then finally, most important, setting the vision for 100%. It wasn't 70%, it wasn't 62.5%. People understand 100%. And the minute that was set, everything changed in Hawaii. And since then, we have adopted proposals to abide by Paris, to have a carbon neutral target, and to have a 100% renewable energy target. Our hope is to transform Hawaii and inspire the globe. We're learning as we go, and we really look forward to working with all of you in helping make it happen and learning from each other. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. That was very stimulating and encouraging. If I may, I have one question to you, Jeff, about the 2 years campaign. This is the English channel testing. You spoke about the 2 years campaign. So, of course, there are multiple steps to go through, but with only 2 years to set up a goal of 100%, that must have been difficult, not easy. What was the strongest incentive that enabled you?
The strongest incentive, so something that I left out of the presentation was there was a real decision point for the utility in importing LNG. So it was important for our lawmakers to set that vision in order to prevent that. We also had an outside company that was interested in purchasing the utility, and that came with a lot of political both influence but also fear. So lawmakers felt stronger about setting a long-term vision before a new owner of the utility came in. So there were some exogenous variables that helped lawmakers make that choice. There was also, I think, heightened awareness of climate and the sense that renewable energy was no longer alternative. It was more mainstream. So there was some comfort for lawmakers to have that courage in making it happen.
Thank you very much. You mentioned about some external factors. So one is about energy security, climate security. I think those were the important factors. Thank you very much. Again, a goal of 100% renewable is another country. Mr. Hugo Lucas Porter, Spain.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like first to thank the Renewable Energy Institute for the kind invitation, and of course, Mika, it's always a pleasure to collaborate and work with you. So Jeff ended his presentation saying that one of the main pillars to reach 100% renewable is the vision. So I'm going to start exactly with that. This is the Spanish vision for 2050, which is decarbonizing the economy, 100% decarbonization of the economy. This is the vision, but it's not only the vision, as mentioned before by other panelists, by Peter, by Ruggero. This is coming with legal documents. So 22nd of February, it was published in the webpage of the Ministry for public consultation, 2 papers, the Climate Change Law and the National Energy Plan for 2030. And these 2 documents, they have this target of full decarbonization of the economy by 2050. And with this vision, then you have intermediate target for 2030, which means the reduction of 20% of the emissions, and we are now plus 13 compared with 1990. 42% of final energy from renewables in 2030, and 74% of electricity from renewables. And then, maybe to compare, we are a 44 million people country. And you can see that at present, installed capacity is 105 gigawatts. So reaching these targets will be through an increase of solar PV mainly and wind, the phase out of coal by 2030, and less than half nuclear. Because if you, I mean, the paradigm of base load and peak is from the last century, but we are already 18 years in this century. And the paradigm of the electricity sector or system in this century is flexibility and variability. So, of course, we put variability into the system, and we have to take out coal and nuclear because they are unflexible. And then we base this transition in gas to give flexibility to the system and in the markets, as I will explain in the coming slides. Support, financial support to renewable energy, zero support. We deploy renewable energy, new installed capacity through auctions. We tell them you have to go to the power market, and what they have to bid is the premium on top of the power market. And this is the premium they are asking for, 0. 8 gigawatt last year, 0 premium. They just want to play against conventional in the spot market of electricity, and they win. Yeah, in the long term, this brings a problem, the so-called cannibalization. So they are so cheap renewable energy that when they go to the market, they get a small price from the market. So in some period of the year, as you can see, it can be 85% of the average electricity price. So this is a challenge that you will see later on how we are facing this, basically changing the market design. Another challenge, curtailment. If we want to reach 74% of electricity only with PV, we will have 30% of curtailment. If we want to reach it only with wind, we will have around 8% of curtailment in 2030. Once again, I will tell you later on how we will cope with this. And of course, actor diversity was mentioned several times. Today, in the European Union, we put citizens in the middle of the energy transition, and citizens today, we buy 100% renewable. I have 100% renewable energy supplier at home, and I can choose among several suppliers. I go in the internet, and I can choose my 100% renewable energy supplier. We can invest in renewable energy. We can produce our energy in our roof. But it is also true that the strongest the competition is with the big companies in the market. They are locking out community power, as mentioned also by Dr. They are locking out cooperative, which of course they bring a lot of values to the system. So basically what we have to change is the market. We will change the auction design. And renewables will be pay as bid. They will tell us how much they want, 25 euros per megawatt hour, and they will give this for all their life, and they are out of the market. And then we are setting special rules for community power. Community power, they don't have to go to the auction, but they will have a share of the electricity every year, and project will have a feed-in tariff, which is the price of the auctions, but they can community power ask for this as a feed-in tariff. They will not need financial guarantees. They will get, in fact, guarantees from us, from the Renewable Energy Agency, and also we will have technical support to them as well. The second issue, decentralization. So we expect that 30% of the generation will be distributed. We saw this morning International Energy Agency saying that 50% of the PV in the coming 5 years, I think, will be rooftop decentralized. This means that we have to change two things. Again, the market design. These people have to play in the market. These decentralized people will have to play in the market. And the second thing is the tariffs, because the distribution company, they are going to be reduce their incomes. So we are working in new market and tariff design, and this is the next slide. So together with the operator of the Iberian market, so Spain and Portugal, OMIE, we are designing these markets, local markets for decentralized generations. So among the DSO and the so-called aggregators, so people putting together the different prosumers, the electrical mobility, demand-side management, they will have their own local market to solve their congestions and to play together in the big market. Also, access to data. For this, you have to have regulation for access to data. For this, companies has to be allowed to look into the consumption profile of all the consumers. So we are also drafting now regulation on access to data. Another challenge, environmental impact. When you have massive deployment of renewable energy, you have also massive use of territories. And this is the environmental impact that we expect from offshore wind. So 3% of the coast can be badly harmed if this is not done properly. And now we are doing also new environmental regulation for large-scale deployment of photovoltaic, because they are going more and more to places where you have some bird nesting or different environmental challenges that you want to avoid this to be a catastrophe. So basically, other considerations is, I was talking about curtailment, how we believe we can reduce curtailment, maximizing the electrification of the economy, taking electricity to produce heating, taking electricity to electrical mobility. We want to deploy 4.5 electric vehicles in 2030. And we saw that in 2017, in the whole world, there were 3 million. Increasing the role of natural gas, so it's the bridge fuel to give flexibility to the system to integrate large shares of variable renewable. The role of hydrogen. Hydrogen will be an enabler of sector coupling. We have already the first project in the island producing hydrogen from photovoltaic, so 100% green hydrogen, to be used in buses. And also hydrogen for flexibility, once again, to produce hydrogen for industrial purposes, but just to consume electricity when we have surplus. And maybe as it is today, the scenarios, we will need carbon capture and storage in the last mile for industrial processes, not for power production, but in some industrial processes. For the moment, is the only solution for the very last mile of decarbonization in 2050. So to conclude, the very large shares of renewables today is not a technical issue, so it's just a regulatory issue. For large shares of renewable energy, you have to couple the uses of energy, which means also that you have to redesign your markets. You have to take care of the increasing environmental and social challenge. And it was not said at all in my presentation, but of course the first pillar is energy efficiency. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hugo.
I have one question for you as well. And I think that じゃあ日本語で
Can you hear the translation? This is the English channel. Thank you for the presentation. Spain, you are kind of an isolated island from the European continent, meaning not interconnected with the continent, but 41% is renewable for your power. And amongst that, the so-called variable renewable, you have a big share already in Spain, which means Japan has a great deal to learn from Spain. So 40 to 74% and up to 100%, you have shown the intermediate goal, and you talked about redesigning the market. What is the most important milestone to overcome?
I think we have faced several challenges. When redesigning the market, for instance, and you talk about large rate of integration, today, renewable energies, they are providing ancillary services to the market. So it's not that they sell the day ahead their electricity. It's that some of them, they prefer to keep the electricity to play in the intra-diary market. I was mentioning in the presentation this morning from Peter, the shares that we have now integrated, it was in an horizontal way, as he said, so increasing interconnection, providing a control center just for renewable energies, let's say physical solutions. No? But in the future, we will have to redesign the market in the way that congestions will have to be solved more locally. And renewable energy, they will have to design their own services to the system. And this, of course, will even be to solve congestions, I mean, renewables. And also, it will have to come together with demand-side management and the use of aggregators. And there will be people willing to produce heating for industrial processes and to provide a service to the grid when there is surplus of renewable energy electricity. And we have to define now these services. Now we have to define how these services are going to be measured, how these services are going to be called, and how these services are going to be paid. But it is happening already. So it is not, I mean, technically, it is not an issue, you know? It's just a regulation issue.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Innovation is being discussed, and earlier Ruggiero mentioned about innovation. Indeed, to have a concrete way like the demand response, the demand and the market have to be interlinked so that more renewables can be provided to the market, and information technology, digitalization, I think is playing a big role behind the scene. Thank you very much for your presentation and a response to my question. We have heard about this particular place very often, a country which is expanding renewables, and the wind turbine equipment, solar panels, equipments, components, a large manufacturer, that this country has a big impact on this sector, of course, China. Mr. Wang Zhong-Jin, can you tell us about Chinese policy and about your ambition, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I come from China Energy Research Institute, which is a think tank. We give the suggestion to the government, but not on behalf of the government. This morning, my before colleagues and also my very good friend, Ms. Li Junfeng, and also already tell you the China energy policy, energy goals. So I answer the three questions to everybody from my presentations. Our topic is 100% error of renewable energy. My three questions, I want to answer three questions. First, why? Second, how? The third, is it possible? Now go back to China. This will show you the coal to GDP relationship. There's two lines very close. Primary energy to GDP, two lines, also very close. Then go to electricity, more close. Everybody should know that so far in China, if you consume to the 10 kilowatt hours of electricity, in which 7 kilowatt hours is from coal. So coal oil primary support China's economy. This is the 2017 energy flow. So that's why we must energy transition. But what are the issues for China energy transition? First, the coal transition, we will consider the coal job loss, coal economic, and the region economic. You know, Shanxi province, and also in the Mongolia, they mainly depend on the coal industry for their GDP. Second, all transition same to the coal situation. And now, everybody knows that China want to use the compare coal and oil more clean the energy, natural gas, but maybe bring the new problem, like the new coal and the new oil problem. Okay. How transition? This is the present situation of China. We want to change this situation to like that. Green and low carbon energy system and modern economic systems support eco-civilization society. So concrete methodologies from energy transition. First, final energy go to the electricity. Then industry and the subsectors also go to the electricity or go to intelligence, digitalizations. Then we should have the green electricity, go to the green electricity. Then economic transition. So my team, since 25, we launched the first version, China Renewable Energy Outlook, high penetration renewable energy for 2050. Now, I give the introduction. It is possible, the third questions from our 2018 outlook. So this is, we designed the two scenarios. One is the state policy scenario. Second is the below 2 degrees scenario. This is the two scenarios, the 2035 years energy flow. You can almost same. This is the 2050 year, two scenario energy flow. That you will find the below 2 degree scenario is beautiful and nice. And the summary is this is our outlook. Final energy by 2050, final energy consumptions almost the same today. Why? Because the final energy high electrification rate, final energy 53% come from electricity. And the power system, wind and solar take the backbone role. Renewable energy electricity account the total power generation 88%. Then go to the primary energy, even below than today's the total primary energy consumption in 2050. So this is for wind and the solar, our outlook results. Finally, I give the examples why I say this is a scenario is possible. I just gave this the example. These are two key elements. Electricity vehicles. In our studies, we have the big assumptions. By 2050s, in China, maybe we will have the 500 million automobiles, in which at least 400 or 450 automobiles is electricity vehicles. All of it is the electricity vehicles that is almost free small energy storage stations. So in future, we use the, so far we say final energy demand side response measures. We can make our electric system is stable, is safety, and accept 2,800 solar PV, 2,600 wind. Thank you.
I have one question. それでは日本語で質問。
This is the English channel. Let me ask in Japanese. 2 degrees goal was discussed. In the case of China, IPCC's 1.5 degree special report. Trying to reach that goal, what would be the amount of renewables required?
We set up the 2 degree scenarios according to how to comply the Paris Agreement. We have several boundaries. For example, the first is different kind emissions related to environment protections. For example, PM 2.5 and other NHOx and SO2. This kind of these emissions. We must meet our ecological environment construction standards. Second, we also set up the CO2 emissions. According to by 2050, the China population per capita emission. And also China GDP contribute the world GDP, and also we take the average level, how much CO2 we can emissions. So set up this boundary. Then we have our model system. Let's select different kind of technology. We didn't consider the CCS. This is tech measures So our model help us select optimization, select technologies. And also in China, so far we have a real case for wind farm and solar PV stations, real case. That's the final results. We sure to go to the renewable energy arrow. Second.
ワンさんありがとうございました。中国
Thank you, Professor Wang. By 2050, 90% renewable is the goal. I laud and commend that. We have heard about Hawaii, China, Spain. These are the countries where the goal is 100% or almost already close to 100%, that they have ambitious goals, but they do have a pathway and they are steadily nearing the goal. Different countries have different context and different backgrounds, and some countries have a different speed. And maybe the different countries is South Korea and Japan, maybe. So the South Korean government last year, coal, thermal, nuclear, phase out, have decided they now have a policy and the goal to go renewable. In order to expand renewables, what might be the vision? What will be the approaches? The South Korean energy policy shall be introduced. We would like to learn from you, Sang-hong.
Good afternoon. I'm Sang-hong Lee. Thank you for inviting me at this meaningful conference. I'll introduce 100% renewable energy scenario. Some environmental group and research group developed 100% renewable energy scenario for South Korea. Recently, WWF Korea published Korea Energy Vision 2050, including 100% renewable scenarios. At that time, I joined the project as a researcher. The scenario says 100% renewable Korea could be possible if Korea will reduce final energy consumption dramatically through innovative energy efficiency and untap renewable energy potential. This picture shows power mix in visionary transitional scenario. It means 100% renewable energy scenario by 2050. In case of this scenario, power generation could increase from 500 terawatt hour to 850 terawatt hour in 2050. Electricity from renewable energy could fully meet that kind of electricity demand through this scenario. But reality is very different. Reality is far from a 100% renewable energy scenario in South Korea. Korea left behind other OECD countries in terms of renewable energy share. Renewable energy accounts for 7% of electricity in South Korea. But according to IEA statistics, the figure have to change less than 3% of electricity from renewable sources. As you know, Korea is transforming energy policy from nuclear and coal to renewable and clean energy. This change has reflect the people's needs for safer, cleaner, and healthier energy system. The new energy policy has two pillars. The one is The one is nuclear power plant phase-out plan, and the second is to promote clean and renewable energy. Yeah. So I'll show the roadmap of nuclear power phase-out plan. Before this energy transition, in the past, the government tried to increase nuclear power capacity up to around 40 gigawatt, and then would maintain the capacity. But revised plan, the new plan is try to reduce nuclear capacity to around 60 gigawatt by 2038, from the peak of 29 gigawatt in 2022. So the gap is very tremendous. Government set a new renewable energy target, which aims to reach 20% renewable energy of electricity by 2030. The target is not ambitious compared to other OECD countries, but in Korean perspective, from Korean perspective, it could look very ambitious because in 2017, we have just 5.5 gigawatt PV capacity and around 1 gigawatt wind. So we will add additional 49 gigawatt renewable capacity. PV and wind dominates most new additional renewable capacity. Government is trying to encourage citizens and farmers to invest in renewable energy project, and then developed a large-scale project for deployment of renewable energy. So renewable energy 3020 is progressing. Last year, we saw 3 gigawatt additional renewable capacity, and including, especially PV capacity increased to more than 2 gigawatt more. Yeah. Last year, new vision of renewable energy project in Saemangum was declared with the presence of President Moon. It includes 2.4 gigawatt photovoltaic project and 600 megawatt offshore wind project by 2022 in western area, Saemangum area. We are also facing challenges to energy transition, like Japan, especially nuclear industry and nuclear academia strongly resisting energy transition. I think not because of direction, but because of the rapidness. They are asking to build 2 nuclear reactors more and promote a nuclear reactor export. And they also criticize renewable energy policy and renewable energy technology and continuously raise the doubt of renewable energy 3020 through influential conservative media and SNS. I think we should cope wisely with those kinds of challenges. Even the challenge is related to renewable energy 3020, such as delay of grid connection, lack of local acceptance, environmental argument, and people's willingness to pay for renewable energy. Those kinds of challenges are very popular in the world and even in Japan. Now we are talking about 2040 renewable energy target. In the process of the third energy basic plan, working group recently suggested revised the target of 30 to 35% of renewable energy in power mix by 2040. What do you think about this figure? I think renewable 3020 is just a beginning of the long journey towards 100% renewable energy. So we should cope wisely with those challenges. So finally, I want to introduce the KIREC Seoul 2019. We are ready to welcome all of you to this wonderful International Renewable Energy Conference. I hope to see you in Seoul in October. Thank you.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much.
In the previous sessions, we heard several remarks about the interconnectors between Korea and Japan. I think that you know that our organization is promoting that idea. What do you think about that idea?
I think interconnection with grid is very helpful to increase very high share of variable renewable energy. But at this point, we have just 2% of variable renewable energy of electricity. So the interconnection issue is not urgent issue, for us.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. For example, Kyushu is so close to South Korea. Already a significant amount of renewable is used in Kyushu. The other day, on an ordinary day, there was a curtailment during the weekdays. So the solar PV might be transferred to South Korea. This is my personal observation. Our next speaker from METI. Mr. Matsuyama, Director General, Energy Efficiency, Renewable Energy Department, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. In the case of Japan in the future, massive introduction of renewable. Japan is also at the start of a long journey. So far, I would say that Japan is quite successful. So, Mr. Matsuyama, including the future vision.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As was introduced, my name is Matsuyama. I'm from Agency for Natural Resources and Energy, Renewable Energy Institute, and all of you who are here. I'm so glad to be with you today. From the world over, all the people at the cutting edge are gathered here to realize the renewable energy society. I think we are able to make one huge step. I'm so glad to be here. So 100% renewable energy. That has been discussed. Looking back at the pathway that we have traveled, at the same time, how we would like to travel well into the future is what I would like to share with you today. You can see in the slide what the government has shown as the power mix. Our agency, UNRI, was established in 1973 in the year of oil shock, energy security. Japan as a country, in a secure manner from the energy perspective, how best to protect the country. That's how it started. But including the global environmental issues, now we are responding to various global issues. And then we've been working on improving the system. That's part of our mission. Sunshine Plan in 1974, that was devised, and the new Sunshine was also devised, spending a long time. We've been promoting renewable energy efficiency. We devised a Moonlight Plan. Top Runners system was one of the things we did. 5-star system. We devised many systems. At the same time, nuclear power energy policies was part of what we did. It triggered to review this portfolio of as Ms. Oembayashi mentioned, the Fukushima accident, not riding on the safety myth. Looking back, Japan, how to devise the energy security device. In 2015, energy mix was again shared with the public. Energy security was addressed, but at the same time, as you can see in the middle, the economic efficiency, Japan and economy, for it to grow in a sustainable manner, taking up the challenges, but the people have to be able to live comfortably, so it has to be addressed as a package. And the climate policies, as we have all those global warming issues, we have to tackle them. So 3 is energy security, economic efficiency, and the environment. 3 is anti-safety. So 3E plus S, those are the basic concepts. And then the structure has been devised to 22 to 24%. As of 2030 fiscal year, the renewable energy target is depicted. It's just, we devised this, but if the people's burden can be curtailed and by overcoming various issues, then much earlier, more renewable energy should be introduced. We share that view as well. So what are the obstacles? Depending on the country, the issues are diverse, I think. Now, what's Japan? From the outset in today's symposium, I have learned so much from Hawaii, from Spain, from China, and from Korea, depending on the country's situation, the natural environment, topology, terrain, and also the density of demand for including the social infrastructure, network, and industry structure, people's income, and also the allocation of tax. What about the burdens? We have to look at each region, each community, and in achieving 2030 energy mix, those are important issues. Top right, top left, you can see about the cost. FIT was introduced in Japan, and PV for 50 gigawatts have now been reached. We are now ranked number 2 in the world, so there has been rapid advancement. But the distorted industrial structure or high-cost structure, PV industry, have some problems, how best we can overcome those issues before into the future. So those are the 2 sides of the same coin. Second, on the left-hand side, the securing long-term stable business operations. On this, about the renewable energy, they occupy areas per region. If you look at utilization factor, there are some restraints in the case of Japan because of the land necessary. We have the narrow land and not very mountainous. So the effective utilization of the area, and we also need to have acceptance from the people in the community. Otherwise, we are faced with problems. How best we can overcome these issues? Down left, that's about the overcoming grid constraints and balancing power. transmission network that has been accumulated for quite a long time cannot be changed overnight. In terms of operation, we should come up with measures, but in the future, for the future network, so that there is going to be a future network, we need to restructure them. Last spring, the 5th Strategic Energy Plan that was revised, we are trying to promote this renewable energy as part of the main source. That's the part of a resolve the Commission has been held. We started devising various rules about the balancing power on the very bottom. I understand that it was discussed in the previous session, batteries and capacity from thermal power generation. At the moment, there's so much headroom, but when it becomes less, how are we going to address this issue? That's the other side of the coin. Regarding energy supply, how best we can reconstruct them for the future. That's the global trend. Japan is not really a latecomer in this regard. Looking at the future, having a discussion, developing them, we would like to be one of the front runners in this regard. In the strategic energy plan down towards 2030, what we are doing at the moment, you can see that. But what we need to see is really about well into the future. The 100% renewables as ambition, we completely share that vision with you. But to that end, with the currently available technology, it probably not suffice. Based on our shared understanding at the moment, that is not really, that cannot do. The totally different industrial structure, mechanism, market mechanism is necessary, and innovation and technology are all essential to address them. And this is a schematic view that we had in the discussions, looking at the future society in concerning energy, PDCA, planning and execution. It's probably not the kind of the picture we will see 2 years ago, and last year we had various discussions with experts from the world over, because the business technology every day it's advancing, evolving. In response to the market, it's steadily changing. While looking at the future, we have to keep changing something that will be feasible. One after another, we need to address them, respond to them, and then change the society. And I think that's something that we have to take into our hearts. So how and what kind of technology are we talking about? So these are the questions actually I would like to ask to you. But I'm one bureaucrat, just civil servant. No way that I could understand all these things. All those of you, the researchers at the cutting edge, or those of you who are thinking about the vision of the future, as business, who have the sharpest smell, olfactory function, who is pursuing them. 2050, speaking of renewable energy, PV panels in 2050 is probably different from what we are seeing now. There will have to be solar panels that are really extraordinary. It's the same with windmills. In 2050, it will be totally different from what we have. It has to be that. But at the moment, no, we don't know. Same holds true for geothermal or hydropower. The innovative things must be made. Pioneers in Europe. We take that. We have been taking that, and we have introduced the FIT. So far, we've enjoyed some success, but we shouldn't just stick to the current technology. The next innovation, epoch-making innovation that will bring us the next future. How best we can get that? With those of you who are at the cutting edge in the world, we would like to have a discussion, and together we would like to aim at a society that has 100% renewable energy. Thank you so much.
Mr. Matsuyama, I know you are extremely busy, but thank you for joining us. You have always sent people from your department. We have had the commissioner, DG of the Agency for Natural Resources and Energy to our event. We have had this program for morning, and the renewable energy, the explosive increase of renewable, it is changing the entire world. In the last 2 centuries on this planet, on this earth, politics and economy have been ruled by the fossil fuel. But from the fossil century, we are transitioning to a renewable. It's 2 centuries. When thinking about 2050, going forward, there's about 30 years. Personally, I think it's not that uncertain. It's only 30 years. As we have been discussing from this morning, we do have technology already, and the technology, they are becoming very fresh and new in the recent years. On top of that, information technology, digitalization, all these new technologies are creating new markets. I think there's a consensus so far. Mr. Matsuyama-san, you are only one single bureaucrat, you said, but when you just arrived, Mr. Matsuyama, Peter over Energy Net of Denmark, government courage was just what he was mentioning. The courage of the government is exactly what is required for the reform of the world of energy. So the courage of the government, big initiative, big will of the government. Without that, industry cannot move ahead. As you discussed, as I view this paper, renewables, fossil, nuclear, there are all options. Of course, better efficiency, energy saving, that would also be done. But in Japan, is Japan advancing to a fresh new energy policy? Maybe from your position, it might be difficult to say, but I think there's a big gap with the policy and going to 100% renewable. Do you have any reaction?
Well, I would like to keep making efforts so that I can have more courage. I think that I had quite a lot of courage, but at the very last page, I showed you something. Yes, we are talking about renewable energy. Ultimately, what should we aim at? The goodbye to fossil fuel. We shouldn't depend on fossil fuel. The blue planet should be kept blue towards the future so that all the humankind can keep on surviving. We have to make the planet sustainable. But the fossil fuel part, at best we can just remove the carbon emissions. It's not just about energy. At the last page, I talk about manufacturing, materials, goods. With the steel and cars, at the moment they are all besmirched with carbon, but we have to actually exit that kind of a world. I think that's courageous enough. We will have to go the distance, because if we are just limiting our thoughts just on electricity, that will not be good enough. 30 years, will that be short or long? It's probably very short. 2030 is just around the corner. A lot of things will depend on the currently available technology, but 100%, if you just dwell on the currently available technology, it will be difficult. We have to enhance efficiency dramatically with innovative technology. Then we have to realize 100% renewables. So higher targets, higher challenges need to be encouraged.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know, of course, you were not with us so far, but exiting graduation from fossil, one possibility might be acceleration of electrification. In the earlier session, we had Dr. Okamoto from TEPCO. By 2050, the renewable, it might be 50% electricity, and the consumption would go down by half. Then the renewable ratio in power generation would be 7 to 8. With further electrification, it could be even more. So it was a breakthrough idea, which I think was rather courageous, considering that it was TEPCO, a conventional utility. Now, if I may, I have questions to other panelists related to what we have just been discussing. Spain, Hawaii, I would like to ask you, and also from China, Professor Wan. So already our community, our lives is based on fossil energy. There was huge investment made already. We now have the infrastructure established, but how can we graduate, exit from our infrastructure? It cannot be done in 1, 2, or 3 years. Before we realize 100% renewable, the system themselves shall have to be replaced, which is very difficult. What is the discussion in your respective countries? Maybe Jeffrey, Hugo, John, Jin, in that order, like 2 minutes, not too long, please.
Very much, Mika. That's a good question because it's a real challenge when you have an incumbent, system companies that are working to preserve what they have while we rapidly transition to this new environment. One success story that we have in Hawaii, there's a company called AES. It's a U.S. company, I believe. They own a lot of coal. They own the one coal plant in Hawaii. But they have made a commitment to a renewable energy future, largely trying to decarbonize their assets. So not only do they own the coal plant in Hawaii, they own the largest solar plus battery development in Hawaii. And now they're the ones building the lowest price solar plus storage facility. So it's interesting just looking at the juxtaposition of owning coal and also owning solar and trying to transition over to the solar. We're in a fairly fortunate position that most of our fossil assets are old, and so they're ready to retire, so it's easier to move into renewables. One of our challenges is we have a large natural gas infrastructure. Of course, it's all imported in and then distributed. And we're encouraging them to look at hydrogen as a transition. So as opposed to just moving away from gas altogether, what are some drop-in substitutes that they can use? Similarly, on the biofuel side, too, we have a local company called Pacific Biodiesel making biodiesel out of waste oils and greases. Now they're growing sunflower and actually using macadamia nut as a drop-in substitute for diesel. So this transition is happening, and again, it's a matter of doing it by design versus by default. I think history is littered with companies that weren't circumspect enough and didn't make that change. We think of companies like Kodak and Blockbuster. Blockbuster actually rented the last movie in Hawaii before they went bankrupt. The last store was closed in Hawaii. It was kind of an interesting story. So we hope to have that vision and make the transition in an orderly way and do so that benefits everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of similar case in Spain. So nuclear is already 40-year-old, it's already amortized. And then with companies, they want to renew the administrative approval for extending life extension. The investment in security is so high that it's not profitable for them. So it's their own companies giving up. So there has been already 2 cases for 2 nuclears. They ended the administrative life, they went for extension, they analyzed the business case of improving security, and they decided to close. In the case of coal, it's quite similar. So the rising prices of CO2 allowances in Europe is making not a business case for a coal power plant. So they will close as far as they reach their administrative life, so just as a business case. Then it is also true that they are the same companies that they are building the renewables. So the 4 big utilities at the end, they own the nuclear and the coal are the ones that are winning the auctions for renewable energies. So at the end, the business stays with the big utilities. And as mentioned by Mr. Amin this morning, also we have this law, it's a law already from 28th December last year on just transition to take care of these people. To take care of the people. It's not anymore the companies, it's about the people, it's about training the people now to work in the renewable energy sector or an economic package to retire in advance, and also working with the European Commission on funds to improve the mining regions' life. So thank you.
for the China government, the goals is establish a clean, low carbon, safety, efficiency energy system. So far, the energy policies for example, from the government NEA already changed. For example, our solar PV, if you don't need the government subsidy, you can construct everywhere, no problem. If you can find the place, no scale limited. For the nuclear power, I think our government priority thinking issues is safety. We can say the 100% safety. If it's 100% safety, this is the key issues. So, in future, just my presentations, we must go to the renewable energy era. Yeah.
ありがとう。
Thank you. We are almost close to the time. So South Korea and Japan, and going to the last round. Sang-hoon, I have a question. South Korea and Japan, in order to realize 100%, we are still at the early step of the long journey. Government, local government authorities, the citizens, what approaches are required by them? Plus, Mr. Matsuyama, I have the same question to you.
I think the driving force for energy transition comes from people's support and people's acceptance. So we are trying to encourage citizens and farmers to participate in renewable energy project in rural area and city area. We encourage people to form energy cooperative, and so now our organization is thinking about the close cooperation with local governments, which are keenly interested in regional energy transition. But we don't have much experience. We are just the beginning stage. We want to find good practice and best practice from Japan and any other countries, and we try to follow fast the successful model. Thank you.
ハワイから結構 you can learn from Hawaii example, I think. Yeah.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. There's a whole mountain of things that we have to do. But broadly speaking, system design, a redesign, that has to be done quickly. We need to work quickly on this, and that's most important. The power system reform has finally started, and unbundling will occur next year. So the grid improvement and leveraging of the grid, that part, and at the same time the operational aspect and market design, this is something that we have to make, which is totally different from what we have done in the past. And so everything has to move in parallel. And I believe it's a difficult task, but we need to work quickly. Otherwise, acceptance will not materialize. And how this can become deep-rooted in the community is a key factor. As a profit model or as a business model, renewable energy seems to be conceived from that standpoint. But local production, local consumption is something that we have to think about. Without that, it cannot penetrate offshore solar and residential solar. This will increase further. So integrating that with regional power and also aggregating the holders. Local production, local consumption is something that has to be accepted, and we need to work on that. Thank you.
Finally, I think it was your personal, very profound personal feeling, Matsuyama-san. I've always been so honest. So the final round to everybody, our international guests, you have been with us from morning. In the final session, it will be about decarbonization, carbon neutral world, carbon-free world will be session 4. Japan is also working towards zero carbon. We would like to ask the international guests for your message, encouragement to Japan, like 1 minute each. And Mr. Matsuyama, you will be the last, and you will hand over the baton to the last session. Jeff, Hugo, John Jin, Sang-hun, and Matsuyama-san.
Right. Thank you, Mika. I think my message would be you have a choice. You can be held back by the inertia of the incumbents, or you can move at the speed of insurgents. And if we want to solve our climate goals, we need to move with haste, expedient haste. So set those bold goals, be courageous, and it really helps to just shape the agenda and change the conversation. As soon as that commitment is made that we're going to go to a carbon neutral future or a 100% renewable energy future, and let them sort it out. That's what we found in Hawaii. It went from impossible to improbable to inevitable over the course of a couple of years. Thank you.
I think today to go carbon neutral is a must. So it's a matter of competitiveness. So with renewable energy, producing electricity for free, I mean, the countries that don't do now the sustainable energy transition will be developing countries in 20 years. Like 60 years before, you needed very robust and high volume of electricity. Today is the opposite. Today is electricity for free. So we have shown here is not a technology issue. It's a matter, as we say, ambitious target and the right regulation. Thank you.
I'm very happy you have this opportunity to attend this workshop. I learned a lot of. My views is if you present different kind of energy technology, you no way to selections. Only renewable energy is a future that's clean, green, no emissions. And also I can give with examples. So far in China, we have the big manufacturer for PV. That's a new things is one of our large manufacturer for PV modules. They already combine the China large coal company. They cooperate together to develop the PV farm. So I believe energy transition, no problem. Thank you.
Actually, I'm not on the position to give a recommendation to Japan because we have a big concern about the growing share of coal-fired power plant. So we should cope with the growing share of coal-fired power plant. instead of reducing nuclear power plants. Actually, the CO2 emission from energy sector is increasing in Korea. So yeah, we should face our own problem.
まあ、エネルギー消費が上がっ
Energy consumption, when it is rising, it might be easier to expand renewables at the same time, but thank you so much. Mr. Matsuyama?
Yes, I learned a great deal. Different ambitious approaches are being taken in the world, and I feel that we need to work hard here in Japan. Toward the next session, long-term strategy is what the Japanese government is working on. So decarbonization, energy transition has to be realized. And based on this very strong intent, the key word, I think, is technology and innovation and finance and global. I think these are the key words. At the same time, we should not confine ourselves just within our country. We have to think about how we can change the world. The Agency of Natural Resources and Energy would like to think about that. I hope to see a lot of discussions from this perspective in the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The future would be technology and innovation, and the social system itself shall have to be transformed and reformed. Probably that shall be discussed in the following session. Thank you very much to all our speakers. Thank you for your massive contribution.